The Warriors won. Yes. I'm not joking. I'm being dead serious. The Golden State Warriors are in the win column, folks. It wasn't always pretty. The defense, left a lot to be desired. But look, a win's a win. This team was hungry for one. They needed for one desperately, and they got one. So we're going to break down what went right. Obviously, some things went wrong. We'll break that down as well. But this was a fine game. A desperately needed victory for the Golden State Warriors. We're breaking it all down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild. It's super easy. My same handle goes for Instagram as well. Good evening, everyone. Happy Friday night. The Golden State Warriors are victorious in Chicago on a night when the Chicago Bulls had a ring of honor celebrating the Chicago Bulls 1995-96 72-win team. But the Warriors came in and spoiled the party at United Center. Final score 140-131. A lot went right in this game. This game started off bizarre in the sense that the starting lineup resembled very closely what we've seen the previous 2 years, but that we haven't seen in a while this year, meaning Kevon Looney was starting and Andrew Wiggins was starting. This resulted in Jonathan Kuminga going to the bench. It was certainly a bit of a head scratcher, but it paid off. And thankfully, Jonathan Kuminga, despite coming off the bench, the move did not affect him in a negative manner. He actually had one of the best games of his career tonight. And and look, like Blimey Maynard in the chat, for example, I can't argue with you here. Blimey writes, what went right? Well, the Bulls suck. Yeah, they're not a great team. And the Bulls are the type of team that the Warriors can thrive against. They're not very long. They're not very athletic. And the Warriors were able to pick them apart offensively. Now, granted, the defense still ended up giving up 131 points. That's concerning. The second quarter was concerning as well. The Warriors went into the half after giving up 45 second quarter points. The Bulls had 75 first half points. It didn't look good at that point. It was 75 to 62 was the halftime score, but it was close enough. And we saw the third quarter magic from the Golden State Warriors that we haven't seen since their title season. What once was a staple of Golden State Warriors basketball, dominant third quarters, has become a thing of the past, unfortunately, these last year and a half or so. But we saw it tonight. The Golden State Warriors scored a season-high 48 third quarter points. That's a season high for points in any quarter. I believe the last time they eclipsed that mark was last year against the Portland Trailblazers, where I believe they put up 55. But that third quarter was everything. They outscored the Chicago Bulls 48-20. But in my humble opinion, what led to the Golden State Warriors being victorious tonight, we can talk about Jonathan Kuminga, we can talk about Andrew Wiggins having a good game. Side note, if you're going to trade Wiggins, do it now, please. His value just went up. That guy is like a stock whose value is just literally jumping up and down. That stock went up tonight. So if you're going to trade him, do it now, please. Now, like literally just seal the deal tonight, because the Warriors are back at it again tomorrow in Milwaukee. By the way, we are going to have a show. I mentioned on the last program with Kylan that we would not have a Saturday Night Live episode because of a birthday dinner with my father, but I'm going to take him out Sunday night instead. So we will have a show tomorrow. But Wiggins had a good game. He showed up, and again, he was put into the starting lineup for the first time in a long while. I actually don't know when the last time was we saw Wiggins in the starting lineup, But again, the reason, though, in my opinion, why the Warriors won this game, and it's not complicated, it's the Splash Brothers. Stephen Curry has been struggling lately. A part of it is the fact that this is always the time of year where you're going to see his numbers dip. Stephen Curry, 2-3 years ago, revealed, and it was a very revealing interview, and I've talked about it a lot on this show, although not much lately, but Stephen Curry views the season in 3 parts. And right now he's in part 2. And he's admitted this one time in an interview, and I really feel like it was accidental that he let all this slip, because it was a good glimpse into Steph's perspective, his view on how he sees the season. And he sees it in 3 parts. Part 1 is the beginning. Part 2 is now, and this will carry over into early March. And then part 3 is the ramp up of March and April, again, ramping up into the postseason. So career-wise, his numbers are always, by his standards, subpar this time of year. So when I see Stephen Curry struggle in January, I never read much into it. Part of the reason as well is the fact that other teams are double and sometimes triple teaming him, simply because they don't have to worry about a lot of other players on this team beating them with an outside shot if Stephen Curry is cold. Klay Thompson, look, he's still dangerous. He still has gravity when it comes to defenders. But Klay this year is not the Klay we're accustomed to. But tonight, besides the fact that Stephen Curry had a fantastic game, 35 minutes of play, wasn't a good shooting night for him overall. He was 8 of 24 from the field. And more specifically, if you take away the 3-point shot, he was just 2 of 9 from inside the 3-point arc, 6 of 15 from beyond the arc. But look, 27 points is a solid outing. And more specifically, in the second half is when he really picked up his game. Steph in the second half tonight, just to read to you just how much better he was in the second half. He played 18 minutes. He had 21 of his 27 points in the second half. And if you look at the net rating for some of these players in the second half, it's really outrageous. Steph was a plus 19. Klay Thompson was a plus 22. Dario Saric, who was also in the starting lineup, that is a move I strongly support. He's been one of the few players this season that has been consistent on a night-by-night basis. And I have no objection to Dario Saric starting or getting serious minutes. But Saric in that second half was a plus 21. Wiggins was a plus 21. Kevon Looney, a plus 10. And then we go from there with the bench. But Steph had a huge second half. Again, 21 of his 27 in the second half. But he wasn't the only one that was having a great night. This was a splash party tonight. Klay Thompson, who still holds the record for most three-pointers ever made in a game with 14, set that mark at United Center. So there's something about this gym that he loves. And on a night where Steph had 27, Klay Thompson led all scorers for the Golden State Warriors with 30. And Klay, so again, the splash party was the difference. When these two are shooting, the Warriors are going to win. 19 times out of 20, 49 times out of 50, I'd say 98 times out of 100. If these two players are shooting lights out, good fortunes will come for the Golden State Warriors. And on a night where Steph, again, had 27 points, also had 9 assists, also had 5 rebounds, Klay Thompson also had a fantastic night. Again, leading all Warriors scorers with 30 points. Also added 6 assists of his own, also added 6 rebounds of his own. But again, it was that second half where the Splash Brothers really took off, whereas Steph had 21 of his 27 in the second half. Klay Thompson had 23 of his 30 points in the second half. In that second half, he was 7 of 11 from the field, 6 of 9 from 3. On the game as a total, he shot 9 of 19 from the field. He was 7 of 15 from beyond the arc. Klay also had 3 trips to the free throw line. He was 5 of 6 from the charity stripe. So it was just great to see those two on this evening light it up. It was good to see. And when we come back, I'm going to highlight what I think a lot of people, myself included, have been clamoring for. And that is Jonathan Kuminga and Andrew Wiggins playing effectively together. For tonight, we saw it happen. And yes, by the way, Romar Hernandez, yes, January is trade value month. And again, I'm saying this partly facetiously, but partly with utter genuineness. genuineness. Sorry. Andrew Wiggins, if you're going to trade him now. His value, and again, just I'll read his stats along with Kuminga when we come back. But I mean, we can't get swept up in tonight's win into thinking that things are magically turned around. The Chicago Bulls are exactly the type of opponent the Warriors are built to defeat. Unfortunately, most of the NBA does not resemble the Chicago Bulls, but nonetheless, a win's a win. We're stoked. And Jammu22 writes, Kuminga. I thought you were saying Wiggins. Is saying, can we trade Kuminga for Siakam straight up? Hell no. You're selling Kuminga way too short with a trade proposition like that. B, Joe Lacob does not want to trade Jonathan Kuminga. That has been reported by multiple sources. So any trade talks involving Kuminga, it's a fantasy. I wouldn't broach that subject just because there's not much reality to it. Patty O'Quinn, there's your shout out for you. What's up, brother? I know you DM me on Instagram every once in a while. Great to see you in the chat this evening. And yes, Maximo, Joe Lacob wants to keep Jonathan Kuminga for very good reason. If you were not convinced after tonight's game that Kuminga is the future of this team, I don't know what you're watching, or I don't know how you're perceiving basketball, because this kid can certainly play. And tonight was a perfect example of that. I'm going to break down that tandem of Kuminga and Andrew Wiggins in just a moment, because tonight, on a night when the Golden State Warriors, I kid you not, I heard this on the NBC Sports broadcast. It was very surprising to hear it from them. And if it's true, it's wild that the Golden State Warriors had 5 turnovers tonight. And I heard on NBC Sports during their post-game coverage that those 5 turnovers are the fewest in Warriors history. That was a record-setting night in terms of the fewest amount of turnovers ever committed by a Warriors team in their rich, illustrious history. That is mind-blowing to me. And they also had 39 assists to go along with that. This was just a very efficient, solid night of basketball for the Golden State Warriors. We're going to have a lot more to discuss about that and so much more. First, though, let's give some love to one of our 2 sponsors for this evening. First up is Jase Medical. And Jase provides something that almost any household needs. That is medical help when you need it. Look, I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but let's talk for just a minute about preparing for real life. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. If that's scary too, it's because it is. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if a significant other that you truly care about, or maybe one of your kids, gets sick while a supply chain issue keeps them from the life-saving medication they need. Thankfully, you will be okay because of Jase Medical, and more specifically, the Jase Case, which is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff can happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com. That's Jase, Jase, medical.com, and use the offer code Locked On to get $20 off your order.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On has a national sports show, more specifically, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga played together. This has been a hot topic for the simple reason that Wiggins has had the worst season of his entire career. It's a mystery why he's struggling the way he is, considering he's still 28 years old. And it was a year and a half ago when he was the second best player on a world championship team. But the reality is Andrew Wiggins, for whatever reason, has regressed and has regressed tremendously. But there's been this fantasy that for a long time that if it turns into reality could result in great fortune for the Golden State Warriors. And that is playing Wiggins and Kuminga together, simply because they're both long athletic players. They're both Steve Kerr's dream prototype of an NBA player. They can defend 1 through 5. Their offensive skill sets are complete. And they're not a liability, really, in any regard. Now, unfortunately, Andrew Wiggins entering tonight was not having a good year, really, in any measure. Again, a career worst across the board. We've talked about him extensively. Entering tonight, he was shooting just 29.8% from 3. And I don't know if that stat reflects tonight's game or if it's before tonight's game. This is courtesy of ESPN. He's averaging just 11.7 points per game. He's shooting just 41.8% from the field. He's averaging just 4.1 rebounds per game. Again, his stats are abysmal by his standards. For someone who's making $25 million a year approximately, and for a player who the Warriors were counting on as being one of their top players, if you have to look at anywhere to point the finger in terms of what has gone wrong this season, it starts with Wiggins, considering how important the team viewed him and his role in the team. And meanwhile, you have this young emerging player in Jonathan Kuminga. These two together entering tonight had an awful net rating for duos for two players. Adding to that, Andrew Wiggins' net rating with any other Warriors teammate has been abysmal all season. It just so happens the worst net rating is him and Kuminga. But Steve Kerr did put them out there together for a considerable amount of time. And Wiggins played well, and Jonathan Kuminga played fantastic basketball. Kuminga came 2 points short of his career high. I'll start with him just because I really think he was a difference maker in this game. The Splash Brothers are why they won, but if Kuminga was not playing with the level of efficiency that he brought to the table tonight, I don't know if they pull this off. Kuminga had 24 points, again, 2 points shy of his career high, net rating of +6, which was one of the highest, which was, I believe, the third highest on the team. Kuminga, but here's one of the best parts. He didn't miss a shot until late in the third quarter. He was perfect from the field. Finished the game 9 of 12 from the field, a perfect 4 for 4 from the three-point line. That's been the one point of criticism that anyone who loves Kuminga could not defend this year. His three-point shot, like every other player on this roster, has sucked. But tonight, 4 for 4. And those threes were huge. They would stave off rallies from the Bulls. Every time the Bulls started making a run, there was Kuminga hitting these huge threes that would kind of quell the momentum that the Bulls are trying to build. So Jonathan Kuminga, again, in just 24 minutes, by the way. And it's important to note this, that Kuminga, when he plays 30-plus minutes this year, the Warriors are undefeated. So why he's not getting 30-plus minutes a night, that's one of the many perplexing things about Steve Kerr this season. Is why are you not giving this kid more of a run? But in 24 minutes, he had 24 points. He added 5 rebounds. Kuminga had no turnovers. He got called for 2 fouls tonight. Again, 9 of 12 from the field, so he shoots 75% from the field. He's a perfect 4-4 from the three-point line. And then Andrew Wiggins, who did get 30 minutes tonight, for once, had a good night. Not from the three-point line. He was only 1 for 5 from deep, but he did score 17 points in this game. He did have 8 assists, which seems rather unusual by his standards. Overall, he was 8 of 13 from the field, 5 rebounds, no turnovers for him either. And he finishes with a net rating of +4. Point is, if these two can work it out together and the Warriors decide not to make a trade, there is some reason for optimism there. There is some reason for hope. But again, we haven't seen this consistently all season long. Jonathan Kuminga, by the way, now 18 games in a row where he's performed with double-digit scoring. So whereas Kuminga has been consistent, except for his three-point shot, we haven't seen that from Wiggins. But whether tonight was an anomaly, whether tonight was some sort of breakthrough moment, I guess we'll find out. But yeah, and exactly. Yala writes, let's see this tomorrow. I'm absolutely with you because we have not seen anything successfully when it comes to consistency with this Golden State Warriors team. But nonetheless, they performed. They did well. So kudos to those two and the Golden State Warriors, again, coming out victorious in this one. Again, 131 points is a lot to give up. So defensively, they had some issues, but offensively, 140 points. And the four players that I've focused on so far are a huge reason why. But they're not it. There's a lot more to come. Wordman, you're absolutely right. You're right. The Bucks are huge, and they are huge. Between Brooks Lopez, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Dame Lillard stretches the floor. They finally showed everyone they could play defense when they beat the Celtics the other night in a blowout victory at home. Granted, the Celtics were coming off a back-to-back. They had just played the Minnesota Timberwolves and beat them in overtime before the Milwaukee Bucks absolutely crushed the Celtics a couple nights ago. We'll see what happens. That game is tomorrow. We will be back at this post game for that. But nonetheless, that is awesome. KM real fast writes, before we take another quick break here, that you're confused that Kuminga literally always looks for Steph. What are people watching? Are some other people writing that he doesn't look for Steph? Because that is asinine. There's no truth to that whatsoever. There was an awesome moment in tonight's game. You know, I'll say before we come back, I have a couple of Kuminga anecdotes that I want to drop, which I thought were awesome. One of those involving Stephen Curry as well. But first, let's go to sponsor number 2 for this evening. And that is PrizePicks, which I absolutely love playing, which is legal in the state of California, where the Locked On Warriors studios are based, where the Golden State Warriors are based. Hell, the Golden State Warriors are named after California. And PrizePicks, even though sports gambling remains illegal here in California, where's the damn graphic? I'm trying to find it. There you are. Daily fantasy sports is legal, and that includes PrizePicks, folks. If you download the app, if you go to the website, you can start playing immediately. And again, I've talked about this a lot, but it never gets old. The premise is simple, and again, it's super fun. Whereas with sports gambling, you're betting on teams and you have all these spreads. With PrizePicks and daily fantasy sports, you're betting on individuals. More specifically, you're betting on a minimum of 2 individuals, a maximum of 6 players. If you nail a 6-player docket, you can win 25 times what you put in. It's super fun. I'll say this again, as I've mentioned before. If you DM me on Instagram @DogWild, I'll give you my picks. I actually win on this platform. The withdrawal system is super fast and easy. It's safe. It's fast. It's clean. It's a whole lot of fun. Strongly recommend checking it out, especially with football around the corner. You can even mix and match sports. We got a playoff weekend coming up here. By the way, I don't know if the rumors are true, but someone told me tonight that the Chiefs-Dolphins game tomorrow is going to have negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. That is wild. I'm very much looking forward to watching that game, flipping back and forth between that and the Warriors and Bucks. But regardless, go to PrizePicks and pick whatever 2 players that you feel confident are going to either have more or less than the amount that's listed for their line. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
One final segment of Locked On Warriors. Thank you very much for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. For the everydayers, Again, we're back at this tomorrow night. Larry Krueger might join me. Today's his birthday. He was, I did reach out to him to be a guest on tonight's show. Happy birthday, Larry. He might join me tomorrow. Maybe Ryan Leong might join me tomorrow. I might have a guest. Stay tuned for that. But regardless, post-game coverage, Warriors, Bucks, will be live right here. And, Stephen Long, I know you're being facetious writing this. He writes in the chat that let's trade Steve Kerr for Eric Spoelstra. I'm glad you brought that up because, and Ken Mamba bringing up that Corey Joseph floater from the game tonight. I have no idea what that was either. But Kerr and Spoelstra, Spoelstra was in the news for a couple of reasons. First of all, side note, I don't know if this is true, but I saw an interesting note that the Miami Heat waited to give him his monster extension, which was what, it was like 8 years. Oh, I got to look it up now because I actually don't know what that number is. But the Miami Heat gave Eric Spoelstra his new contract extension reportedly after his divorce was finalized so that he could keep all the money. And again, he got a $120 million contract extension. Bravo to Eric Spoelstra, well-deserved, an individual widely regarded as the best coach in the current game. But he got an 8-year contract extension for $120 million. Now, why is that relevant to Steve Kerr? Why am I bringing that up? Because Steve Kerr is in the final year of his contract. He right now is a lame duck coach. And what the Spoelstra deal does is it sets a line, it sets a barometer for what Steve Kerr would get if Steve Kerr decides to come back next year and if the Warriors decide they want to bring him back. That adds a whole new wrinkle because Steve Kerr and his agent are not going to accept a deal for anything less than that. They might be okay with something less than 8 years, but now you're talking about somewhere in the $15 million a year range. I think that's exactly what it comes out to. If my math is correct, please someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. So that's another wrinkle to the whole Steve Kerr's future with the Warriors thing is if he's going to stay, the Warriors are going to have to pay him that much because that's what his agent is going to ask for. Now, again, who knows if Kerr comes back after this year? He might retire and go back into broadcasting. He might get an extension, but the question is going to be asked now, will Joe Lacob pay Steve Kerr, an individual who over the last 5 years has seen a below 500 record as a coach, an individual who in his 10 plus years has never developed all-star talent, who currently has 2 players on his roster disgruntled. Is he worth $15 million a year? That's a lot of money. So we'll see what happens, but it is worth bringing that up. John Brown, by the way, asked, where was Moses Moody? Moses Moody is injured with that calf strain. He's going to be reevaluated in 10 days. The Warriors announced that earlier today. So that's what's going on with Moses Moody. The 2 anecdotes I wanted to mention real fast about Jonathan Kuminga. One is he had a moment tonight. It was a big boy moment for him. He was in the post and he muscled his way. I can't remember who was guarding him. It might have been Andre Drummond. I mean, the story would sound better if it was him, but I'm honestly pulling a brain fart here, remembering who was guarding him. But Jonathan Kuminga had a fantastic moment where he muscled his way in for a bucket +1. And in the background, the footage was awesome because Stephen Curry, who has his back, who supports Kuminga, he said all the right things back when he was first asked about Kuminga voicing his grievances about his playing time. Steph loves his kid, and he has this kid's back, which is huge. And to see how giddy Stephen Curry was following Kuminga muscling his way in was awesome. We haven't been seeing a lot of happiness from the Golden State Warriors this year. So I thought that moment was huge. Just in terms of team cohesiveness, in terms of Steph viewing Kuminga as a teammate he likes. It was a big moment in that regard. But the other moment, which I thought was huge, was early in the game, DeMar DeRozan, who, side note, awesome player. I feel like he's being wasted playing for the Chicago Bulls. If anyone acquires him in a trade, they're getting one of the league's premier players. And DeMar DeRozan finished tonight's game with 39 points on 15 of 21 shooting. That's incredible. That is the epitome of efficiency. And DeMar DeRozan had this play early on because Kuminga was guarding him. And that's one of the things that Kuminga's haters do not bring up ever, and they should. Jonathan Kuminga is one of the only players on this team who can defend 1 through 5 and who's doing it efficiently and effectively. He's routinely guarding the opposing team's best player, and he had DeMar DeRozan as his defensive assignment. Early in the game, DeMar DeRozan did a pump fake because that's what good players in this league do. They use all the little tools, and the pump fake is grossly underrated in terms of its effectiveness. And he pump faked twice. The second pump fake, Kuminga got off his feet, and DeMar just went right into him for an easy foul. But Jonathan Kuminga, this is one of the aspects of him as an individual that really impresses me. He learns fast. He learns from his mistakes. When DeMar DeRozan later in the game tried to pull that again, the pump fakes, Kuminga did not leave his feet. He learned literally the very next time he encountered the situation. And that, to me, oftentimes separates someone who does not have a high acumen versus someone who does. To me, that is a very clear a standard and benchmark for judging intelligence for a human being. Do you learn from your mistakes right away? If the answer to that question is yes, you learn fast, you're growing fast, and you're growing as an individual. And Kuminga is doing that. He learns really quickly. You rarely see him repeat mistakes. So kudos to Kuminga for pulling that move as well. Hybrid Nick wants me to talk about Brandon Podziemski. Yeah, why not? Podziemski had a good game tonight, played 27 minutes. The stat sheet doesn't show it, though, except for the net rating. Podziemski was second on the team in net rating with a plus 12, but he only had 5 points. He was 2 for 8 from the field. He had a lot of open threes. He had 4 3-point attempts total, missed all 4 of them. A couple of those, again, were wide open. So an off night there in terms of shooting, had 4 assists, had 3 rebounds, but he had a net rating of plus 12. And look, as long as the team is winning when he's out there, awesome. The player who actually led the Warriors in net rating tonight was Trayce Jackson-Davis, who I thought had an awesome game this evening. Definitely held his own against Andre Drummond, who at least was, I know he's at the tail end of his career now, but Drummond was an elite big once upon a time. Multiple All-Star, made an All-NBA team, has led the league, I believe, in rebounding previously. Trayce Jackson-Davis played fantastic tonight. In 17 minutes, 4 or 5 from the field, grabbed 7 rebounds, and was a plus 13 to lead all Warriors players in net rating to score 13 points. So now Joe writes, how can Trayce Jackson-Davis play 10 less minutes than Kevon Looney? I mean, look, I think you can answer that one on your own. That's a very rhetorical question. I don't want to beat a dead horse. But yeah. So Hybrid Nick 12 adds, Draymond does everything Podziemski can do, but better. And he's a bigger and better defender. Well, and look, you're writing here that you hope that Draymond gets Podziemski's minutes. That is likely what's going to happen. I mean, Draymond is viewed by Steve Kerr as a point guard, which is why when he's out, it's one of the many reasons it hurts the team tremendously, is because even though he's limited offensively in terms of his shooting, his passing skills, his ball handling skills are exemplary. And that goes on top of the defense that he brings. So, yeah, you're going to see Podziemski's minutes go down when Draymond Green comes back, because those two, as weird as this may sound, in Steve Kerr's mind, play similar positions. So, yeah. So we'll go there. And and Chris from New Zealand, I know you're being facetious. I'm glad you brought this up. We saw Jerome Robinson play minutes tonight. That was weird to me. I do not understand that. And every time I see Kuminga, especially with a night like tonight, where again, 24 points, 9 of 12 shooting, perfect 4-4 from deep, when we only see him get 24 minutes, and I know Jerome Robinson only played 4 minutes tonight, but why? I don't get it. Jerome Robinson did play 4 minutes tonight, and they were important minutes. I believe they're in the second quarter. He was a -8 in net rating to lead the team in terms of the negative. Had 1 point on a free throw. How did he only have 1 free throw? Was that a technical? Was he the one that shot the technical free throw? That is weird. Anyways. Jeff's cool. Real quickly, we're wrapping it up here, writes, Kuminga should not be traded. He won't. If reports are true, Joe Lacob loves him. Folks, the Warriors won. Enjoy your Friday night. Thank you for joining. We'll be back at this tomorrow. Warriors and Bucks, back to back. Let's see how they do. Bye-bye.